Hey, everybody. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're enjoying the afternoon. We're back with another Thriving in Exile. This is number 7. Here we are, day 25 of this pandemic sort of exile period for our church. I hope you've had an opportunity to see the video we posted last night that Pastor Joe edited. It was an important update on Easter week and the events of Easter week, as well as the financial health of the church. Hope you were encouraged by that. We've been incredibly encouraged by what God's been doing here. Thank God for your faithfulness and challenge you to continue to be faithful as well. If you've not checked out that video, it's right on our YouTube page. Make sure and check that out. Well, let's dive right into the Bible today in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse number 9 today. 2 Corinthians is a wonderful book, and this section here leading up to our text, 2 Corinthians 5:9, is an important section, and I want to sort of give you a feel for the context here. If we start over in chapter 4, the Apostle Paul in verse 7 talks about having this treasure in earthen vessels as a description of his body and his life. He says in verse 9, we're persecuted, struck down. Verse 11, we're delivered to death for Jesus' sake. Verse 16, even though our outward man is perishing. Verse 17, our light affliction is working for us, this wonderful weight of glory. And then in chapter 5, beginning in chapter 5 through verses 1 through 5, so 2 Corinthians 5, 1 through 5, Paul begins to talk about death and how he's eager to be present with the Lord, and he knows that while he's on earth, he's not able to be present with the Lord in that way. And so the context here is the reality of suffering, the hope of heaven. And then as he moves into verse number 9, our verse, he begins to talk about life on earth in the kingdom for the glory of God in the midst of all of those things. He says, therefore, we make it our aim, whether present or absent, to be well-pleasing to him. So what Paul's saying is that for the believer, for him, and then of course that transfers to us, we should make it our aim. Now, some translations may have ambition. The word actually literally means to love or to seek after honor. It's the idea of making something our life's mission, our life's goal, our primary driving motivation. What is the primary driving motivation behind what we do, our train of thought, the way we interact with other people, the decisions that we make? Well, Paul says it should be to be well-pleasing to the Lord. Again, verse 9. Therefore, we make it our aim, in light of the reality of the shortness of life. We talked about that Sunday. Persecution and suffering and things like that, future hope of heaven, we make it our aim to be well-pleasing to him. And I would challenge you to make this the driving motivation for your life. When I do counseling, I often talk about this being a true north for the motivation of the heart for the believer. This is the place that we go back to. We keep asking this question, what am I motivated by right now? Is it self-preservation, self-promotion, self-protection, self-prosperity? Am I motivated about getting things for me or protecting myself from other things or drawing attention or in serving him? And beloved, that can apply in 1,000 ways, especially now in the midst of this pandemic. Ask yourself that question today. What is the primary motivation behind what you're doing? Then look at verse number 10. And verse number 10 and 9 must go together. He says, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive the things done in the body according to what he has done, whether good or bad. So Paul says he makes it his aim, and we should make it our aim to be well-pleasing to God, because we, even as believers, are going to stand before God in judgment, not in relation to wrath and not in relation to sin per se, but we will give an account for our lives. And Paul says, therefore, we ought to live, making it our aim to be pleasing to him. Let me make a distinction. We don't live to please God in order to be saved. We live to please God because we've been saved. And that is very critical as a distinction to our approach, our work, whatever it is, the way we approach the Word of God and spending time in the Word today. Make it our aim to be pleasing to him. I see Marianne and the Aimster, and I see Thelma and Adelia, and I see Ernie and Andrea and Yenny and Melissa and Connie. We got a bunch of folks on here. And Paul, thank you so much for jumping on here with us. We're hoping this is helpful to you. We're hearing from some of you that it is, so I'm grateful for that. Let me talk about 2 more things, and then we'll be done. The second one is baseball. I'm wearing my Brave shirt again. This is in honor of Luke Jackson. I am a San Francisco Giants fan. I'm not a Braves fan. I'm a Braves fan in the sense of being a fan of Luke, but that's all Giants. Well, they're talking about baseball coming back for potentially May and all being in Arizona. with no fans. It sounds kind of terrible, but I guess it's better than nothing, especially if it's televised. I've got this app on my phone, the MLB app, where I can typically watch all the Giants games. So as long as they're still loading to that, I guess that's all right. But we'll see what the future holds. Number 3. Now, instead of a car one today, we need to bring back a topic I haven't talked about for some time, and that is iguanas. We haven't talked about iguanas for a while. I talked a lot about that out of the chute 5 years ago, kind of brought that back down. But iguanas, right? They're everywhere. Whenever folks come to visit us, I love to show them the iguanas. They're great to look at. I've seen there's videos on YouTube of folks hunting them and catching them. I've seen folks grilling them on the barbecue. Saw a guy eating iguana tacos. Another guy making omelets out of iguana eggs. All those things are no bueno. I probably don't want to go that route. But the thing about iguanas, my relationship with them changed just 2 days ago, because one came in my backyard and started to tear it up, digging holes everywhere. I didn't even realize what was going on, but I looked out my window and I was like, is that a giant iguana on my deck? And so we had to have taste good with mild taco sauce, but they're terrible for your yard. And if you live in a place where there are a lot of iguanas, you probably knew that already. All right, so that's it for today. 2 Corinthians 5:9, a wonderful text, even to commit to memory, whether we are at home or whether we are away. We make it our aim to be well-pleasing to him. So may that be true of us. May our primary motivation be to please God, to honor God. And may that be reflected in the way that we talk. Let's be gentle with one another today. Let's be patient, forbearing, forgiving. Let's have hearts filled with hope. We can please God by being hopeful and not doubtful and fearful. And let's spend time in the Word of God. I'm telling you, this isn't a good time. This is the time for you and I to be in the Word of God more, to be praying more in the secret place, to be sharing the gospel. This is the time. I don't know if we'll ever get a time like this again for the rest of our lives, so please take advantage of it. Listen, I love you.